Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Brian Baldinger doesn't just like football, he loves football.
You watch JPP right here and watch his ability just to slip like that. That's a little cross chop. Now, square the hips up, bam. I mean, it's the whole package of how he plays the game. Like, his hands are just hands. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Football!
Football, yeah! Football!
Football! All right, welcome in, football-loving friends. This is Daily Vikings Entertainment here. This is Purple Daily with Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, and our executive producer, Declan Goff, presented by TCL. Enjoy more of what you love with TCL. And what is it that we love more, especially in the offseason, than lists on this show?
We do love lists.
Love ourselves a good top 10,
I'd
top
say
32.
reckless speculation 1, a good list 2.
Yeah, for sure.
Ranking, and then a ranking 3.
A pecking order, perhaps
Pecking
4.
It's a list, though, right?
That's a
Hierarchy?
list, I guess. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Guess you're
They're all
splitting
kind of
hairs.
in
It's
the
fine.
same.
No, yeah, absolutely.
A Mount
Disagree.
Rushmore.
Yeah.
A Mount Rushmore is good. So, boys, we actually have 2 different lists. Well, 3 if you count the fact that there's 2 lists sort of built into one here. So this is going to be a list episode of Purple Daily. And let's start with NFL coach rankings. Should I go through the CBS and the PFF, and then we can just sort of decide? Let's do that. I'll give you both lists here, and then we can sort of decide. Okay.
Yeah, here, show.
We got time.
NFL head coach rankings here. We'll start with Pro Football Talk because Mike Florio sent out his top 10 coaches in response to the CBS article. He's got Bill Belichick as the number 1 coach in the NFL still. I think the shine might have wore off a little bit there.
Wow.
He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT, but like
Right, but we're questioning now, right? Like,
Yes.
was it Belichick and Brady, or was it Brady, Belichick?
I think there was a little more Brady there than maybe people thought
Yes.
over the years, all right?
I'd agree.
But he's still number 1 on the Pro Football Talk list. Sean Payton, number 2. Mike Tomlin, number 3. This seems to be 2, like, sort of career achievement list in
Yes.
some ways.
Agreed.
Pete Carroll, 4. John Harbaugh, 5. Andy Reid, 6. Kyle Shanahan, 7. Ron Rivera, 8. Matt LaFleur, 9. Mike Zimmer, 10 on Mike Florio's list. And then on the fringe, he has Stefanski, Flores, Vrabel, McVay, and Arians. All right? So keep that in mind. He's got Mike Zimmer as the 10th best coach in the NFL. CBSSports.com has Andy Reid, number 1. Bill Belichick, number 2. John Harbaugh, number 3. Sean Payton. Sean McDermott, 5. Sean McVay, a lot of Seans here, spelled S-E-A-N. 3 consecutive S-E-A-N Seans here. Interesting. Sean McVay, 6. Pete Carroll, 7. Bruce Arians, 8. Matt LaFleur, 9. Mike Tomlin, 10. Kyle Shanahan, 11. Frank Reich, 12. Kevin Stefanski, 13. Mike Vrabel, 14. The disrespect here. The blatant, unmitigated
Animated
gall. Mike Zimmer, 15 on CBSSports.com's list. Here's the write-up. This is a perfect spot for Zimmer, whose Vikings have literally had an on-again, off-again relationship with the playoffs since he took over. Since 2014, they've been out, in, out, in, out, in, out. So they're due for a return to the postseason this year, and that makes sense considering his defense, almost always stingy, is set to rebound. Like his quarterback, however, Mike Zimmer might always be good rather than elite. So 15th on CBS, 10th Pro Football Talk. Who's got it more right for Mike Zimmer's place among NFL coaches?
I'd probably, you know what? I'd probably put him in my own personal list right around where I put Kirk, which is about 12. So it's probably in the middle. I hate Florio's list. I think that's a terrible list.
Really?
Andy Reid is 6th. Are you serious? Andy Reid is 6th on that list. I mean,
That's
this
tough.
guy now has a Super Bowl. Look at his success in Philadelphia. And I know it didn't include a championship, but I mean, look at the runs to the title game, which as Vikings fans know is not easy. I almost discount Pro Football Talk's list because of where they put Reid. I think Reed's top 3 to me right now, and if he's not top 5, you're doing it wrong. That being said, I'm probably gonna side with Florio a little bit more as far as Zimmer goes at 10 than I think 15 is low for a guy who's stuck around as long as Mike has and gone to the playoffs every year. But personally, I'd put him about 12. So I think both of them put together are probably fair.
Yeah. Dex, what about you? Which one do you think is more fair here?
I think probably 10th, 9th is where he should be. I would actually take him over Matt LaFleur. I would. I know LaFleur's more of a forward-thinking coach. Both Zimmer and LaFleur, I think, are a little flawed in game or on the fly adjustments. I do think they're both a little flawed there, but I think he's done a great job basically cleaning up the entire Vikings defense. I know outside of last season was a disaster, but he's changed the culture. I think he's a very good head coach. I've said he's the best head coach of my lifetime. I think about 8th or 9th is probably acceptable for where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I actually think 10th. I'm with Dex on this. I think Pro Football Talk has it right. I think Mike Zimmer is a top 10 coach. I wouldn't put him like near the top 5, but I think 10th is fair. When you look at the fact that in his worst seasons, the disaster seasons, they're still 7 and 9. You know, they don't train wreck under Mike Zimmer. And Mike Tomlin can say the same thing. I don't know that the Steelers have ever finished below 500 under Mike Tomlin in like 13 or 14 years or whatever it's been. They're always competitive. The Ravens are always competitive. Now, some of this, if you're Bill Belichick, if you're always competitive, you got Tom Brady as a quarterback. But then again, like Andy Reid helped develop Pat Mahomes. Bill Belichick helped develop Tom Brady. So those coaches deserve some credit for maximizing the potential of some of those quarterbacks. But I view Mike Zimmer like, I'm not a huge sports bettor, but I know enough about sports betting. I know when to hedge. Mike Zimmer is like a hedge in sports betting. He's never going to give you the full upside of what you could win at the top level, right?
Sure.
But he's like insurance at the bottom. You're guaranteed to not lose your ass with Mike Zimmer. Like, he's there to help you hedge, make sure that you don't go broke. You're not going to go 3 and 14, I guess, now with the 17 games. Like, you're not going to be a 3 or 4 win team with Mike Zimmer. So if you were ranking coaches based on like security of not being a train wreck, Mike Zimmer would for sure be in the top 10, and he has the upside of going to at least one NFC Championship game. Got to see more on the offensive side of the ball. Got to see more in terms of just being able to beat good teams, which he's 20 games below 500 against good teams. But I guess the main thing I would put on his resume is not going to be a train wreck. Mike Zimmer, not going to be a train wreck when he's your head coach. If you want stability, he's your guy.
The ironic thing about that statement is ultimately at the end of their careers, for very different reasons, Zimmer and Cousins are going to have very similar rankings of like where they fall, because Cousins also statistically great, not a train wreck. But it's just, if you think right now, both of them to me would be ranked at approximately the same place.
Yeah.
When you consider their position, I think Kirk is probably on his best day. He's top 10, but he's not high up. And ordinarily, if I was to rank Kirk right now, I'd probably put him 11th. And if I was to rank Zim right now, I'd probably put him 11th.
Yeah. Well, that's actually to that point, and I'm going to reread this sentence from the CBS write-up, because CBS actually nailed my own personal biggest concern about the Vikings. Like his quarterback, however, Mike Zimmer might always be good rather than elite. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way the Vikings are set up, right? They've got a really good coach. He's certainly not a buffoon or anyone who's going to just completely like melt down in preparation. Like, he knows how to construct a game plan. He knows how to get the most out of defenses. So, like, he's a good coach. Kirk Cousins is going to put up 4,000 yards. He's going to throw 25, 30-plus touchdown passes. He's a good quarterback. He's one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the world. Rick Spielman, he's a good GM, right? He's going to keep your roster pretty stocked.
Yep.
But are they really elite at any of those important places? Like, they're kind of where they're supposed to be. They're a 9 or a 10 win team on a regular basis, and sometimes they get to the playoffs and sometimes they don't. There's a lot of good and not enough great, and I think CBS nailed it in that last sentence.
The only place where they've got the ability to be elite at times, they have been, but it's hard to do it consistently because it takes your entire core group coming together is defensively. So Zimmer, if he has the right components and they don't get hurt, which is a huge I think has the ability to oversee and help build an elite defense. Other than that, no, I think that they're really good at a lot of things, but there's no place that I bank on and say that because offensively, as long as they have the installation that they do or the philosophy, offensively, they're never going to be elite because they won't turn that key. They're always going to say, let's run first. And offensively, I think they have the components to potentially be elite, maybe, but we don't know because they're not going to show us that.
Is it, and this may be tough because you're comparing apples to oranges. It's a quarterback, there's a head coach, but it might, I even kind of feel like Kirk might have a higher ceiling, that there's a ceiling that he can reach. That maybe even like speaking on the fans' behalf too, like there is still one more level to Kirk's game, we just haven't seen it yet. Whereas Zimmer, like I know what I'm gonna get was I know the ceiling where it's at, but also his floor is also here too. Like Kirk's got a deeper, like a bigger story house, right? Where Zimmer's like the Rambler, like you know exactly what you're getting in the foundation of that home.
Yeah, I mean Zimmer has shown Zimmer's like what 65 years old, and he has shown really little interest in being the overall CEO of a football team, right? He's a defensive guy who just does as much as he needs to offensively and outsources all of it. And so if there was another level to his game, it would be really connecting with the offensive side of the football and just being innovative. I mean, that's what drives winning in today's NFL. You got to stop the opposing teams, but teams that can blow the roof off their upside on offense are the teams that are playing at the end of the year. I don't think that there's like a hidden clutch gene inside Kirk Cousins that's going to magically turn him into this amazing John Elway, Pat Mahomes, late in games hero. But I think if you get the pieces around him honed and you give him the protection that he needs, could there be a nice little 2-3 win streak in the playoffs for Kirk at some point? Sure. But of course, if that happens, it would also mean that Mike Zimmer has the same 2 or 3 win streak in the playoffs too. But they're very similar in that, like Judd said, they're both kind of like 10th or 12th.
I think Kirk Cousins physically has the gift to show us more than he has. I'm pretty convinced mentally he's hit the ceiling. And that's the problem.
He gets very easily flustered and sort of paralyzed by needing it to be perfect, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's the first list here. And speaking of perfection, all right, I'll tell you, I don't know if they've achieved perfection, but pretty damn close to it at PXG and PXG Minneapolis with the new Gen 4 golf clubs. At least in terms of PXG clubs are concerned, it's the best clubs that they've ever made. We got a bunch of golf fans who consume our show, Mackie and Judd Purple Daily here on Score North. So if you're a golf nerd like we are, PXG Minneapolis is a golfer's paradise. They've got clubs priced in multiple different ranges, and they've got apparel for you to rock out on the golf course this summer. So check them out. It's an awesome place in Southdale Center, PXG Minneapolis, and pxg.com/Minneapolis. Declan, you were giving me the I got something sign there.
Oh no, I was not. Was I?
Oh, sorry. I thought you gave me. I thought you gave me the. I got a hot take here that I was going to.
No, I was giving maybe the finger wag of like, yes, my 120 score could use some PXG upgrades. So yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Hey, before we get to this next list, so we do have an opening. If you want to work with us here at Score North, we're expanding our sales team. So if you've got experience selling digital content, ideally would be amazing. But if you have experience selling digital assets and you want to help us grow Score North and Purple Daily and Mackie and Judd, we'd love to hear from you. Why don't you just send me an email, pmackey@scorenorth.com if you're interested. It's pmackey@scorenorth.com. We are looking to add someone to our team that can help Judd wear expensive shoes and drive expensive cars.
Don't send me lavish an email lifestyle because I'll probably just delete it.
Hello.
You want to reap the benefits of us bringing in someone 100%. To help
100%. Well, and I appreciate
financially.
Anybody who wants to work with us.
But you won't know their name in the hallway if you run into them. It's likely.
No, if you sell something for me in particular, I will learn your name.
Okay.
That's my promise.
It's a very selfish transaction for Judd. All right, boys. List number 2 here. This is from ESPN.com, and they have ranked all 32 rosters So just in terms of how strong are you 1 through 53, and they used, I think they mostly use Pro Football Focus's player database and their ranking database here. So let's go through it here. Where do we think the Vikings should be? Buccaneers number 1. Although I wonder about that. They're running it. I mean, they should. Like, they won the Super Bowl, and they should run it back. But running it back doesn't always pan out.
No, it doesn't. And they're not exactly young, right? They certainly are not a quarterback. I think to put the Buccaneers 1 is gutless. It's gutless.
Wow.
Seriously.
I don't think it's gutless.
They just won the Super Bowl. I mean,
yeah, but that's the thing is, why would you put? Do you know? I mean, the year-to-year turnover of champions in this league, and you're going to put Tampa Bay 1, gutless. ESPN, step up to the plate.
I love Judd's threshold for something being gutless is just an arbitrary June,
gutless,
July ranking on ESPN.com. You gutless cowards.
If you're going to do a list,
come at me.
If you're going to do a list, do the list right or get off the list.
Number 2, Kansas City Chiefs. Biggest strength. Can you guys guess the biggest strength for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Offensive line.
Head coaching. No. Pat Mahomes.
Well, they fixed their line. Well, I know it's Mahomes, but still.
Mahomes.
But you know.
Phil looked at us like, oh, you guys aren't really guessing.
I think he was looking
right.
at me for saying line.
They did fix their line,
I think you did say line, and I wasn't sure if you were just forgetting.
He thought you were serious. He thought you were an idiot.
Yeah.
The Browns are 3rd.
Okay.
I mean, they should have a ridiculous roster. They drafted number 1 for 20 straight years.
Yeah.
You know, you should have a roster for God's sake.
I still don't think they're 3rd, but that's fine. Gutless.
4th, Bills. 5th, Ravens. 6th, Packers.
What?
Does this suggest that even without Aaron Rodgers, that they could still make some noise? And
that team's going to win 5 games,
well,
if that, without Rodgers.
Wait,
the
6th best roster, 1 to 53 is the Green Bay Packers? They have Devontae Adams, who I love, but who else do they have at receiver?
Aaron Jones.
Well, Valdez Scantling is out there.
And Alan Lazard. Put some respect on Alan Lazard's name, damn it. Come on.
Okay, do you really think that Jordan Love is going to get those guys the ball?
A.J. Dillon's one of the best backup running backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really down on this list, but keep going.
Blake Bortles. Okay, yeah. By the way.
The Rams are 7th. The Cowboys are 8th. And the Vikings are 9th. Biggest strength, Justin Jefferson. Did not play like the 5th wide receiver selected in the 2021 draft as a rookie. Played more like someone who would be 5th wide receiver selected in the redraft of the entire NFL.
Yep.
Of the entire NFL. Think about that. Like if you redrafted literally the entire NFL, not just his draft.
Draft, right?
That Justin Jefferson would, I think 5th is probably aggressive, but he'd be one of the first 20 players picked.
Yeah, he wouldn't be 5th, but yes.
That's correct.
No?
Yes.
He would be.
Biggest weakness, Minnesota's interior offensive line has collectively earned a 44.2 pass blocking. That's absurd. So 1 through 100, the interior of the offensive line has a 44.2 pass blocking grade over the last 3 seasons. That's nearly 10 points lower than the 31st place Seattle Seahawks. Ezra Cleveland, who's expected to transition, and Garrett Bradbury were both much more effective as run blockers than pass protectors, and rookie Wyatt Davis was drafted with the intention of helping all of these things. The X factor, Patrick Peterson. That basically the summary here is Patrick Peterson used to be amazing. Now he's not. He's the X factor. So your thoughts? Vikings with the 9th best roster in the NFL with all the additions they made this offseason.
Well, not knowing the 8 teams ahead of them, I would say it's probably exactly right and incredibly fair. But when they put the Packers 6th, I'm curious what the hell they're doing. Like I would need to go back and I don't like what they've done. Like I do agree on the Rams completely, and I would probably put the Rams higher than they have them.
Yeah.
But I do think in the overall spectrum, the Vikings being right around 9th is probably fair. I just don't like the order or the list before the Vikings. The X factor being Patrick Peterson. He is an X factor, but he would not be my primary one at all. There's going to be depth behind him. 1, 2, it's not like they signed him on day 1. If he would be the primary X factor if on the first day of free agency, they had signed him and been like, okay, this is huge here. But I mean, he sort of fell to them and didn't have a job, and that's fine. He's here. I'm not criticizing him in particular. The X factor with beyond a shadow of a doubt to me is one player, Danielle Hunter coming back at left end.
Give us your Mount Rushmore of Vikings X factors for this.
Well, I mean,
year.
the X factor
Right
is
now.
but the X factor is very important here, and how they did this, I don't like at all.
Great finisher.
Hunter is one. 2 is Cousins, because he's got everything around him. He's an X factor now, you guys. I mean, if this team's going to be as successful as the expectation, Kirk Cousins is sitting on a huge year. And I don't mean 4 bad games. I mean like 16 good games and maybe 1 off game.
What is your definition of what an X factor is? Like, I've always kind of wondered, like, because people talk about the X factor, like, what does it even mean? What is an X factor?
It's
just something like a wild card? Could go which direction?
It's a player that could go in different directions. I mean, in their mind, Peterson is coming off a bad year, but he's joining a coach who knows defense. And the question, and it's a big question, is can he rebound and go back to where he was a few years ago with the Cardinals, or is he just cooked now? I'm not saying he's not an X factor, but the biggest X factor on this team is if Hunter comes back and is the same guy that he was pre-surgery, that's 14 and a half sacks a season. That's a ton of sacks. If he comes back and he's okay and gets 5 sacks, and you don't have a good right end as well, your defense is undermined big time.
All right. I've got my own Mount Rushmore.
I'm sorry for the passion here, but
you don't ever apologize.
But when I hear
passion,
Patrick
Josh
Peterson as the X factor, I mean, I'm not likable, and I get that.
Yes.
People in this town don't like me at publications like Judd Daily or Juddtown or whatever.
It should be at JuddDaily.com, just reporting on the daily musings and opinions of.
Yeah,
with a hoodie and his arms crossed.
That's not
maybe
the
a beer.
Factor.
Maybe a beer in hand.
Maybe a beer.
According to the Google, an X factor is a variable in a given situation that could have the most significant impact on the outcome. That's the definition of an X factor.
Could have the most significant impact, but might not.
Could.
But it might not.
So it's not.
That's why
Peterson,
it's an X factor.
I think that's why it's Pat P.
No, Pat. So here, I'll give you my
real
quick. I'll give you my quick Mount Rushmore here of X factors as I understand that definition.
Okay.
I do put Pat Pete on mine.
Yeah.
Because if he goes back to being the Pat Pete of like 3 years ago, then all of a sudden we're talking about maybe the best defense in the NFL. Garrett Bradbury is an X factor. If he doesn't get better at pass protection, he is the quickest. He is the barrier that prevents the quickest A to B line from defense to Kirk Cousins, and he needs to be better. Danielle Hunter, I agree with, and Greg Joseph has to be one of the Mount Rushmore X factors. The kicker of the Vikings is always an X factor, and they're going to do this with an inexperienced guy that hasn't really kicked in like 2 years, 3 years in the NFL. So that's my Mount Rushmore of.
I like how we're taking the X factors.
X factors.
Yeah. They're important.
Little X Pac, little Sean Waltman. I like it.
Sean Waltman in the house.
I don't even know.
So
Judd explains who Sean Waltman is next time on Mackie and Judd.
Yes, I once saw Sean Waltman. Speaking of X factors, tear his butt.
Oh, that was the guy you told me about. That.
Open. I was a ring announcer for that card at the convention center, and he finished the match out, but he had to go to HCMC to get his butt stitched up after the fact.
Bronco Buster.
Apparently, he took his singlet off after the event was over, and it was there's just a pool of blood inside his singlet, and just splashed all over the floor.
Gross.
Somebody had to clean that up, man. It was bad.
Yuck.
Anyways, so to your question about the Packers, I think so. These are all PFF grades here, and the thing that the Packers have going, for instance, to put them 6th, that the Vikings don't have at 9. Offensive line's a great example. Mm-hmm. And now they did say goodbye to their franchise center, who went and signed with the Chargers, I believe, in free agency, right?
Lindsay, yep.
So, but they don't have any like train wrecky offensive linemen. And our guy Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus says this all the time. The offensive line isn't about having 5 blue chip top of the line guys. It's about avoiding the disaster. It's about not having Dakota Dozier. If you can just if you can have 5 league average offensive linemen, you're probably going to have an above average offensive line, because collectively they're going to avoid train wreck games, and they're going to hold up in moments where, like, if one guy can't get it done, it essentially train wrecks the whole offensive line, right? So the Packers have Bakhtiari, who's one of the best left tackles, and they've got Billy Turner at right tackle, and then they've got 3 guys in the middle, Elgin Jenkins, Josh Myers, and Lucas Patrick, none of whom are train wrecks. And the Vikings, as we already went over, to this point, the last 2 or 3 years, the middle of their offensive line has been, in pass blocking anyways, an abject disaster. So they're projecting Wyatt Davis to be a huge upgrade over Dakota Dozier, but just because he's going to be league average. And they're projecting that Christian Darrisaw could wind up being a really, really good left tackle, maybe starting in his rookie season. So projecting those two rookies being better than for sure Dakota Dozier is why the Vikings are actually probably higher on this list than they otherwise would have been.
Okay.
That's why the Packers are high too. So
The Packers are high, all right.
High on beer and cheese.
Yep.
Yeah, always. Well, thanks to Federated too for powering the show. Federated is here to help business owners in and around the Twin Cities area. You can find out more about the industries they protect, which ranges from auto services, woodworking, printers, retailers, wholesalers, you name it. There's a bunch of different industries that they protect, and you can find out more information, like I said, federatedinsurance.com, and how they can help you get a better night's sleep as a business owner with risk management tools. Find out more, federatedinsurance.com, and remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours.
Football.
That's our Thursday Listapalooza here. Mount Listmore.
X Factor.
Listicle Thursday.
What's the X Factor of this show?
Me.
I would say whether Declan remembers to change the bottom banner on our YouTube topics.
That's the X Factor.
Yeah.
Okay. We did well today.
Yeah. All right, guys. Good stuff here. 4-question Friday tomorrow. We also have at some point, I know it's 4th of July weekend. We're gonna keep the content train moving here, but we do have 3 Purple Rewind episodes ready to rock, and we're just trying to figure out. I think a lot of people loved the Sage Rosenfels Brett Favre stories from a couple weeks back. And so there's a part 2 to that we'll release that this weekend so you guys can get your part 2 of just amazing Sage Rosenfels behind the scenes Brett Favre anecdotes. We also did a deep dive with Jake Reed into the 1998 Vikings offense.
That was fun.
And we did a deep dive into the Adrian Peterson record-setting 296-yard rushing performance with Brooks Bollinger, who was just a brilliant handoff machine in the entire second half of that game.
After Tavares got concussed.
Yep. So all of those things, we'll figure out when we're going to release those and give you guys some great stories in Vikings history. But thanks for hanging out with us. Daily Vikings Entertainment. Please click the subscribe button on our YouTube page and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.